she brings a background as a strategic solution consultant at Dealpath, the leading deal management platform for real estate investment and development teams. Cassie, I'd like you to take it over from here.
Hey, Hazel. Yeah, great. Thanks so much for the introduction, and thank you to Realcomm for hosting us on today's webinar. As Hazel mentioned, I'm a solutions consultant for Dealpath. We are an online software platform that's empowering some of the top real estate investment teams to drive maximum performance on their assets from pipeline through portfolio management. And we're currently supporting over $10 trillion in transactions. So today I'm going to talk a bit about how leveraging automated data and streamlining processes, specifically at the root of real estate, so really at your deal pipeline level, helps to grow your company and provide a really clear competitive advantage. So today's webinar, we're focusing on case studies, so I'll be sharing some insights with you on one of our industrial clients who acquires and develops in the logistics space and some of the results that we have seen from them. And I have to say that a lot of these results are representative of a number of clients that we've seen come through and focus here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. All right. So let's get started with some background on this client. So this client, like many others in real estate, really had two main challenges. So one of them was data decentralization. They just had data in a number of different areas, Excel spreadsheets, etc. And this really caused their workflows to be complex. Also a lot of back and forth communication, so just not having data at their fingertips and it taking a few days in order to have responses back on some key metrics and the foundation to keep their business moving forward. And I have to say, especially with Excel, as soon as you start sending that, it really becomes out of date almost as soon as you send it. So I would say this was one key area that we dove into with them. One element that I actually heard from McKinsey & Company was that they said that reinvention is key to growth, and that most of the time that reinvention means digitally. So this company in particular had started adopting technologies here and there, and saw some small benefits. But their main goal was that they were going to be raising a new fund, and they wanted to truly exponentiate their growth potential. So in order to have that and to be able to have it scalable, they needed to focus in on this particular area, which is the deal pipeline. So let's go ahead and back up here. All right. So let's pinpoint kind of their main goal here, as I mentioned, was raising their fund. So their main goal was to be able to be efficient and have efficient scalability with centralizing all this data. We mentioned the disparate data and having it all centralized in one place. Now, I'm a big theme person, this is the overarching theme that we had for them, but there was a few main goals that we wanted to sit and really focus in on for them. The first was being, in order to, grow their pipeline, they needed to be able to source that and have many different available optionalities in here. So their number one goal was to create optionality in their investment decision making and be able to have a big pipeline in order to do that. Second was, as deals are closing or markets are becoming hot, they needed to be able to quickly sift and filter through that information. So having key insights to this analytics and all the new pipeline data that they were going to have was key. They wanted to be able to filter down to what was the most opportunistic to make sure that they were focusing their efforts in the right place. And then lastly, I've talked a lot about centralization of data already, but instead of having to answer directly to emails constantly or going back and forth with the analysts, they wanted to be able to quickly dive in, see this information. But besides that, it's really workflow oriented. So how are we going to be able to streamline these workflows and have it work, across the different teams for the company? And ultimately, after we were able to focus in on their pipeline and start to really manage it down so that we have it simplified with smooth and easy processes, we were able to see some awesome results with them. So in particular, we were able to do a couple of things. Their results were monumental to the company. So one, in order to scale, they needed to make quick decisions. With Dealpath, in particular, they were able to minimize that time frame. So instead of having it take days, they were actually able to streamlined down into minutes in order to capture that data. Secondly, they were able to quadruple their assets under management. So, going from fourfold with this new AUM, they were actually able to get there and only had to double their headcount. So with the systems in place that they put, they were able to have that exponential growth, and with a limited number in terms of the number of people that they actually need to grow the company with. And I just want to talk a little bit more about the key strategies that we dove into with them, but also just best practices in general that I've seen through working with a number of different clients here, and through consulting in general. So strategy-wise, there is a method to the madness. We've repeatedly seen this work done. And the main point here is to really be able to start with the foundation. So there's so much, when working with these clients, there's always so much data that they're looking to streamline and to bring into one consolidated space. A lot of times it can get overwhelming. There's a lot of different places to look. The key point is to really start from the beginning and say, okay, what is the minimum information that we're going to need in order to get this up and running, to get our processes going, and not get overwhelmed by the amount of data that you're trying to consolidate. So just starting at the foundation and making sure that we're focusing there. What are the essential elements and what is the main goal? And then second, a little bit of, I guess, product lingo here, but being able to do this with the minimum viable product. So again, taking the simplicity and making sure that that's what we're seeing here. Simplicity is really key to driving this adoption. We've noticed that with a number of clients that try and take these large amounts of data, as long as we're streamlining this, we've seen great results with the clients actually leveraging this information. And then, lastly, in terms of our processes, now that we have everything streamlined, we have our minimum viable product. One thing to note is just to not forget about the quantitative versus qualitative metrics here, especially in the IT world. We get really sucked into making sure that we have the correct data, the correct metrics, and that we're checking off all of those boxes. But a key element is to make sure that we're also understanding the qualitative side of these projects. We want to make sure that we're not forgetting the user end of this, that we are working hand in hand with the business teams, and that this is going to be an iteration. There's always going to be a beginning point where you have this new implementations all set up, but there's going to be iterations that's going to go back and forth with the business team, and to not forget about the opportunity to do so. One other element that we've seen is that just the customizability aspect helps really with both of these steps, and with driving adoption and iterating. By being able to customize different elements and having the language speak to the way that the company is already working really helps to reduce the kind of energy threshold to achieve these best results, and it's a big catalyst for adoption. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're hoping to drive this all within one big command center, but again, starting with that foundation and iterating with the minimum viable product that's needed. And lastly, just wanted to point out, this is just one client out of many. So while we saw the quadruple growth by having this team focus in on their deal pipeline, we've also seen 5x, 30x, etc., with a number of different clients. So the client that I just talked about wasn't Blackstone, but this is just another example of clients who we've seen some massive exponential growth with, who are really focusing on centralizing and automating this specific area, really the lifeblood of their real estate firm.
Thanks so much, Cassie, for the really great presentation. And you had mentioned that the client was using the platform as a command center. So folks are always interested in what kind of data can help with decision making. So what data were they funneling in that you saw made a marked improvement on their decision making?
Yeah. So in particular, they're taking a look at some high-level metrics, I would say, to make sure that they're driving the growth that they're expecting to get. So even something as simple as their assets under management, a lot of times they'll have to go to their website or somewhere else to see exactly what's there. But the percent of their acquisitions that are currently going through, the percent of the developments that are going through, really the pace of the deployment are all metrics that they were looking to track. We actually saw a shift in this. So again, from a more qualitative perspective, then they started taking a look at the lease-up timings and kind of the construction close dates. And that's when we saw a shift in really critical dates becoming super important, these workflows becoming important. Yeah.
Great. And then you had the second question for you. So this case study was about a client with the goal of growing their portfolio. So how have you seen a client in other verticals with other goals grow?
Yeah, so this was specifically with an industrial client, but we've seen this with, our typical commercial assets, so multifamily, office, retail, but also we've been seeing a lot of, especially with the markets out today, we've seen a ton of growth for development firms and particularly home builders. So there's been a large amount of growth within that space and needing some automation to their tools that they're leveraging. Another space that I think isn't typically thought about, within this realm is just debt tracking. So being able to track debt on all of these assets that they're looking to grow.
Got it. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cassie. Really great to hear from you and what you've been working on.